Hey guys, it's your girl Mashir back again, surrender to purpose. And of course, we've been granted the opportunity to get some more info from Mr. Hillis Pugh. Hey Hillis, how are you
Hey,
today?
I'm good. And this is part two. So, didn't expect to do part two, but I was so guided to share this story of discovery. I mentioned this in the first part where I talked about, how my mom would travel a lot during the summer.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of on watch, well, my grandmother, kind of just watched us, but this is an interesting story, if you will.
Listen, the more that we get to know, what was the fuel and the fire that got you to this place where you're able to really almost denounce you're human. Let's not get it twisted. You're human, like all of us. But
am
the,
I am I really human? I don't know.
like this is what I'm saying. Your spiritual DNA and the way that the Holy Spirit source has guided you to the mentorship and the teaching that has elevated you and your opportunity that you freely share with so many people, like knowing how and why is amazing. So I'm so ready for this story. And thank you for part two. Because
Yeah,
you could have just left it cut there, but I'm just so
right.
grateful
Yeah.
that you're open to share with us some more.
So I came out to my family around 16, and it was real interesting because my mom, my parents, parents know.
Mhm.
Let's
Sheesh,
just get that out the
girl.
way. Let's just get that out the way. They
Mhm.
just know, regardless. I mean, they know their own flesh and blood. They know that. So around 16, I came out, and I would, hang out later than usual. I was just doing unusual things, and I would get in trouble here and there. But I'm like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. When I turned 17, that's when I said, hmm. And then that was an interesting time because yeah, because I just, wait, 15, 16, yeah, no, so it was 17 I graduated high school. And, I'm getting all the years mixed up. But anyway, it doesn't matter how old I was. Let's clear that. It doesn't matter how old I was. It was one summer. My mom was out of town, and I decided to do some Hillis exploration, or Hillis exploration, if you will.
Okay.
And so, living in a big city, living in Chicago, there's plenty of opportunity to hang out, meet, whatever. And I remember going downtown, and this is how I met my first boyfriend, because the summer before that, or a few months before that, went to hang out with this other person. Mind you, everyone's older than I am. I'm like late teens, at this time. And this one particular summer, I met my first boyfriend. I just graduated high school. Yeah, I just graduated high school. And hot summer day, downtown Chicago, and I'm walking past what was then known Marshall Fields. And I see this attractive guy and has red hair. And I'm like, wait, he has red hair like I do. So, that's like, there's someone else like me. There's someone else like me. So that was the draw. That was like, there's someone else that kind of looks like me. And so in that, we hung out the entire day. But I walked past him, looked back, and I see him looking. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because you don't. This is the time where you don't know. It's like late '90s, where you like, Am I going to take a chance? Am I going to get beat up? Am I going to get what's going to happen if I say something? So you really don't take a chance. And so the stare, the return stare was the thing. I'm like, okay, well, he's either going to be interested or I'm going to walk away with a black eye, something. And so somehow I summoned the courage because I walked past, I turned around, walked back, and introduced myself. And we hung out for the rest of the day until night. We, had lunch, then we had dinner. I mean, it was just like fun and casual. There was like really nothing, connected to it. But it was in the space of just being in the flow and just really enjoying that. And in, that one day of meeting him, he ended up becoming, my first boyfriend. For we were, no, like 6 months, 8 months. It wasn't long term, but it was like short. And so because I was still young, I'm like, what is this? And this was, my mom's out of town. She's not going to be back for a while. I think I was out to maybe about 1 in the morning. And my grandmother gave me hell for coming in late.
Mhm.
And so, and my grandmother really didn't like me because she knew I was gay. And when I eventually told her, my grandmother's like, she gave me that look of disdain of how could you, or I'm never gonna have grandkids now. And it was just like all of that energy. And I'm like, why are you so mean to me? What did I ever do to you? And in hindsight, in saying all of this, she realized I was like the smart one and how intelligent I was. And she didn't say this all in the beginning. My grandmother told me this years later, but it was just in the vein of me really understanding myself and discovering who I was. That day really allowed me to really find out who Hillis was. How much courage do I have? How much, this or how much that. So it's just really, being in that space, because we talked about creativity and we talked about really nurturing that space. And so, this one thing led to many. And this is, it feels just important for people, for myself, to possibly even relive some of those moments because people who've seen me over the years, they don't probably have heard that story before. They heard me talk about my mom, they heard me talk about my grandma, they heard me talk about my aunt, the women in my life, but they, and just so happen, me being psychic sometimes is a good thing and sometimes it's not a good thing because this person, my first boyfriend, he's in spirit now.
Oh,
And
wow.
we didn't end on good terms because he was a hothead. He was like a super duper hothead. And he was always fun, but he was just like a hothead, always getting himself into trouble. And so but we would go out all the time and just go dance all night long. Like go to the house music club in Chicago, just dancing. He was one of those where he had to be seen. He's like dancing with fans and this and that. He was very creative. He was an artist. I mean, he did everything from music to poetry. We even had did open mics together. Like we would play off of one another. I even used to have a pen name, a pseudonym, when I wrote my poetry. And so when I really got into the space of really accepting myself, I dropped my pseudonym because what's the point? I mean, I want people to know it's me. So yeah.
Right. And that for me, the self awareness, I think, comes in layers for all of us because our identity begins with our family. Our identity begins with our environment, our friends, our family. And then as a teenager, we've created this persona which is really us protecting ourselves from not being mature enough to handle the emotional things that we went through as a kid. So then, you know, some people are tough, some people are nerds with a book, some people are the bully, some people talk crap,
Yeah.
and that's really not who we are. That's how we chose to present ourselves to our peers to feel safe, like you can't see what I don't know how to work through. So if
Yeah.
I'm correct, you're sharing that at 16, mom is gone for the summer, you're with grandma, you're sort of understanding your sexuality a little more, and the courage to step out and like see who you are a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's from the age 16 on, because I think I met him like around
Was
17,
that, is that,
18. Yeah. And so what's interesting is as I
mhm.
reflect back
So that
upon
what I'm
this.
saying,
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
so yeah, what I was saying is that, so the self-awareness, like in, like that was a story that inside of you took the courage, you had the confidence to sort of say, this is who I now believe that I am, or I'm just going to like go out and see if this is who I am and what am I going to get back from that. So how did that newfound self-awareness give you some courage in other areas of your life? Because self-identity is big, going
Yeah,
from
it
not
is.
really knowing who you are or standing on who you are because you're your family's you. You're not your you
Yeah.
yet. And so when you
Yeah.
first get that real big aha feeling, now that you've had that,
Mhm.
what did like the rest of your later teens to early 20s look like just because you found out who you were?
You know, and it really helped me to really continue to step into that space of really exploring who Hillis was at the time. Because by the time I was 20, I moved out the house. My family didn't like it. They were like, "No, you can't leave. You gotta stay." No, no, no. Are you moving out because of your sexuality? I'm like, no, I'm moving out because I want to know about me. I want to know, and I can't do that in the house. I can't do that being here. And my mom was hurt. My aunt was moved out and married. My grandmother was like, whatever, because she still had the stank face about me. But it really, e- and how and it's interesting of how this is coming through and how I related to the work that I do, because
Mm-hmm.
during the time of adolescence, from early adolescence till you're like in your early 20s, you're still in this space of self discovery. This is what I help people to see and help teach them to know. And it's funny because as I sit in that space now and navigating that through who is Hillis, and this was ever evolving, like from day to day, month to month, year to year, to define that. And there
Mm-hmm.
was never really a definition for it. There was only the space of, okay, well, let's see if this works. Okay, well, let's see if this works. It was a full on experiment to me. Because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is who I am today. And during that time, it was like I was either happy, super happy, or very moody because, I'm out on my own trying to figure life out, being frustrated that things are working out the way that I think they should. And then I asked my mom, and my mom really didn't have a sense of what was going on because my mom was kicked out the house at 17, and with my stepdad. So they were living on their own in Cabrini Green, in some of the worst projects in Chicago. And my mom had me when she was 20. So in some way, I felt I was, in hindsight, looking at this now, I feel like I was reliving some of her stuff, you know, in that time
Definitely.
because I wasn't settled. There was like this moment of like, yes, I'm finally on my own. Yes, I'm discovering who I am. But there was also this feeling of of unease and fear, but I still had to move through that to really discover who I am. And now being almost 50, it's like, I think I finally know who I am.
Right. So wait a minute. We got to go back just a second because when you were speaking, it hit me pretty deep because your 20s are definitely when you're like, okay, I am not them. I am me, but I'm trying to figure out who me really is. So, what was the spiritual impact like? I know you said
Oh my
in
God.
your early
It
20s.
was, it wasn't. There was honestly
Is
what
that
the,
when you had your first reading?
it was, it was maybe like around 24, 25. I can't recall it exactly. But for me, my spirituality was in house music. I mean, I would go dance some stuff out on a Friday and Saturday night. I mean, I kid you not. I mean, I didn't. I mean, at the time, I wasn't going to church. I wasn't doing any things that I did as when I was younger. My thing was, I'm like, I'm 21. I'm going out to party. But then it turned into more of a exorcist or exercise, if you will, because if you know deep in our culture, there's the connection to dance and how movement and spirituality connects that, and that's what it was for me. I would be the first one at the club and probably one of the last ones to go. I
Yeah.
kid you not, because it was just that much ingrained in me because I didn't have anything else. It was either dancing or poetry at the time for me. That was my spirituality, dancing and poetry.
Hmm. Right. I think a lot of us can resonate with that. That resonates with a lot of us because culturally, unrealizing it, Source and Spirit always had a way for us to tap in, even if we didn't know how to tap in. So you're going to dance, you're going to sing, you're going to write that creativity where you're not thinking, you just feel how you're
Yeah.
feeling in the moment is the highest connection. So, I get that. I guess the other part of that question, same story line. Um, so you've had some amazing, profound mentors and teachers that or is like a once in a lifetime, like only because your spirit was destined for that connection.
Mm.
Um, what were some of the healing components that and I guess I'm saying healing components because what I know to be true is when the student is ready, the master appears.
Yes.
And in having compounded trauma that doesn't look like trauma because we don't promote it as trauma because we grow and we live in it and we flourish in it. Thank God for the melanin, the DNA, or whatever allows us to, jump those hoops. But you did some sort of healing that allowed you to be prepared. I don't know if it was from your first reading that it was like this aha moment, and then you went through some different healing things that you had to do as a person. Because, yeah, what was the healing like for you to like be spiritually aware that this was the route and the path, that this was the mentor, and you have to be healed. I just know that the teacher
if
come and you have had some powerful teachers.
if 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 the healing happened, it was because I did it. I'm just going to be real, because at the time, I mean, I wasn't as spiritually connected or aware as I am now as I was then. I mean, granted, I was like 23, 24 when I had my first reading, and the thing that stood out to me was, you're going to be a healer. And in my thought, that was because of the poetry that I wrote. It wasn't me thinking in any terms of spirituality whatsoever. I wasn't thinking like that at all. But it wasn't until it's interesting in how certain people come in and out of our lives when they do, you know. And for me, relationships and how the interaction of each one is almost a mirror. to one relations of the past and looking at one relationship in particular and see how it mirrored my mom's relationship. And it's just interesting even thinking about this now, with the verbal abuse that my mom endured, with her uh, boyfriend that she was in and out with, and how that kind of mirrored itself into my relationship, even, to the point to where, it got physical. And I never gotten physical with someone. I'm one of those people, I shy away from a fight, but I fight if I have to. But it's one of those things that I strongly, strongly dislike doing because there's no point to it. There isn't. And so I feel that after that particular relationship, it was opening to me to really become more aware of the people around me and that was in my life. And honestly, I believe that's when the spirituality began to really kick in. And that's when I started to go do Reiki and have Reiki done on me because at the time I met a friend, my sister, who we're still friends today. Wow, it's been over 10 years I've been friends with her. And some of the things that she taught me, and that was just a gateway, an opening
Yeah.
for me to have this. And honestly, most of my teachers, I've had very few physical teachers, but most of my teachers have been in spirit. Most of my teachers have been in elements. Most of my teachers have been everything else but people. Because I have my Lemurian teacher that I sit with now. I have a couple of shamans that I've sat with. In terms of the nourishing or healing aspect, as some people call it. But my path wasn't mainstream. It wasn't traditional. It was just what I needed, and so that's what it pretty much comes down to.
Yeah. So I think, okay, so the what I'm trying to connect the dots with, because it's so powerful. Like, this conversation is so powerful.
Mm,
Um, so you were able, after you had a parallel situation, that you were able to realize this is like some coding from another life. This is not for
yeah,
me.
yeah,
And so coming out of that, being able to set limits and boundaries, being able to recognize I have to heal, I have to do some stuff. Because what I'm trying to connect to is that there are a lot of people who either recognize their traditional religion or some of the components that are connected to their family, and as they're trying to find their self,
mm,
they'll go to a reading, they'll get Reiki, they'll, find some spiritual elements or things that might resonate with them initially, and they're just like grabbing information and information, and they
yeah,
might have these experiences. But what happened with you with those experiences extraordinarily different
yeah.
than everyone else. What was the very first experience like for you? And I'm not talking so much from the spiritual aspect, but the emotional, personal aspect. The first time that you were in a trance or visited, or connected with a supernatural being that you realize, like, whoa,
Yeah, I got you.
like,
Yeah, I got you. I'm gonna pause because I have to go. So that's a really good question, and so what comes to my mind immediately is the first time I got sleep paralysis.
oh wow, share that, please.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, not being connected to the spiritual space at all, not knowing any of this, it was the scariest thing at all because I was sleeping on my back, and next thing I know, I couldn't move. I'm like, what's going on? And I felt this energy in my room. I'm like, what is this? And once it was gone, I couldn't go back to sleep. I was in a space of fear. I was afraid. I'm like, what's happening? The typical emotions that one would get with sleep paralysis. And it wasn't the first time; it happened multiple times with me. So, which is one of the reasons why I seldom sleep on my back. If I do, it's in the middle of the day. It's not at night.
Right.
um, because there's even another time I remember I had sleep paralysis, but it was different because I was just coming in from a night of dancing, oddly enough, and I hear something, and then next thing I know, I see a shadow by the door to enter into my apartment. I'm like, what is this? And I couldn't move. I'm like, oh, here we go again. But as I developed an understanding of what this was, it was whatever I was allowing myself to be in some sort of trance like state and not aware of it. And so, which takes me to my first Reiki session I ever had. And, found my sister on Craigslist because, that's what people did to advertise back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, they had
Right.
to promote. There was none of the websites that are dedicated to find healers like there are now. And so I found her, and then we booked a session, and it was definitely an out of body experience, and how much energy she told me that I had, and the presence that was felt, and she's like, you were just gone, you were just totally out of your body. I'm like, oh, okay. And if was the one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had, of really being able to traverse this body, this energy, to really sit in a space that was more comfortable and didn't have to be afraid to really tap into the soul that is me, or allow the soul that is me to occupy this body in this full capacity.
Wow. That's heavy. I
Yeah.
mean, the heaviness of it is, um so emotionally, how did that feel where you had a succession of events happen that you knew were like, wait a minute, this is otherworldly. I, I'm not really aware of any of this, but I think I need somebody. You go on a hunt, you find a Reiki healer, somebody to help you, and then she tells you, like, you're different. Your energy, this is what happened. Like when you left that first session, what was going through your mind, and how did you, like, did your humanness come to grips with the reality that you just left from, knowing that you were on a trajectory spiritually?
I don't recall what I felt emotionally in this totality per se, but I know that there was a sense of gratification knowing that I wasn't crazy,
Right.
knowing that there's really not anything to fear when there's the proper guidance in that place. And so that's what really helped me is surrendering trust to someone else. It's like, okay, I
Surrender.
can trust you. I'm trusting you with this process, and with me being able to trust, I let go, and then allowed what needed to happen, and kind of came back with that sense of gratification for that experience, knowing that, okay, well, this is what it is. I mean, and honestly, it's funny. I seldom look back on those events because one, I really don't recall them as much, and then two, you know, they were what they were. It's not as important as what's happening now. That was the foundational beginnings, but now it's like there's so much more. You know.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm grateful for the conversation going into that space is that, um surrendering to your purpose when you're a 3D everyday person and you're just plugged in the church, school, government, all of these systems. And then when the Holy Spirit and source of all creation starts to pull you in a specific direction, like you said, relief.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy. I can trust this person. Like something in your spirit lets you trust this person, but it was really you surrendering to realizing that this is the purpose why you were created.
Well, yeah, why I chose to be here in this time. I mean, there's always that reason for something, whether we are aware of it or not. And definitely, I have not been aware of, well, then was not aware of anything that was happening in my life or what I was meant to do, and all the relationships and connections that were formed and cultivated at that time, and me going through puberty, and me discovering who I was and who I wasn't, and really transversing the energy of my life. It's like, what are you talking about? And so honestly, the only thing, some of the things that I remember are the anchor points, the significant moments, and that first time it was like, yeah, okay, this is interesting, but you know,
It
yeah,
sort of opened up for me, though, understanding the three strong spiritual women that were a part of your foundation and why a huge part of your audience base are females. Like you really were this huge male spiritual person, unaware of your gifts, but you were able to see so many components of what it looks like for a woman to be broken, get healed, walk in her power, discover herself, rediscover herself, all of
yeah.
it. Like
I
you,
mean, that was my family. Was my all three of them. I mean, everything from my grandma, who was the iron fist of the family. What my grandmother said went, and if you
Mhm.
disagreed, that was, mm, you know. I even remember the one time where I felt really bad, really shamed, is when I was maybe 9, no, I had to be 10 or 11 years old, still about to hit puberty. All the kids at school have all these transformers and all these other toys, and I wanted one too, but my family was broke and we couldn't get it. So I went to the store that wasn't far from my school, and I stole something, and I got caught. And I'm like, good, won't be doing that again. Um, and so when I got home, and the thing is, once when you get home, you're going to get it from everybody. Got it from my mom, got it from my aunt, got it from my grandmother like 3 times over. Just the punishment and embarrassment. And I
Mhm.
remember there was a workout bench in my mom's room, and sometimes I would just go under there, and being a short person. At the time I was maybe not even 5 feet at the time when that happened. And I would sometimes go and lay under her workbench. And this was after after it happened. And I remember my grandmother coming in my mom's room, looking at me and saying, "Are you practicing for you to become a thief and live in jail just like Hillis?" Which is my stepdad, not me, because I'm technically Hillis the third, I think, or Hillis Junior. I forget, but that's a whole other story. But yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, how? Why would you say that to me? But that was just my grandma.
No, you know what? But words are so impactful, and energy. Now we're aware that it's so impactful, but just looking at how you've been able to bless and help so many women who have gone through foundational trauma because you lived it, not as a woman, but as a man, learning
Yeah,
how to manage and navigate women because that's what you were taught. That's
yeah,
so
and
powerful.
to navigate this space of empathy and compassion, it really brings me a lot of joy just to be that. And if person, male or female, seeks that, that is, you know, something that I am able to do. And in the beginning, I wasn't sure why I was able to do what I do at the level of compassion and empathy that I have. But as time went on, the more clients, like clients that I saw, they helped me to understand. Oh, that's because my aunt experienced that. Oh, that's because my mom went through that. Oh, yeah, that's because
Mhm.
my grandmother is stubborn like that. And so it's just like these little nuances and reminders of it. And so it's just in that space of appreciation that I know that I can handle whatever comes my way. It's like there's nothing I can't do.
Right.
And literally, I kid you not, there's nothing that I can't do in this energetic realm, because I remember even one time someone asking me, and this is a fairly new client at the time, and she asked me, like, "Do you know anything about soul retrieval?" And in my mind, I'm saying, heck no, I don't know what that is. But my spirit said, yes, yes, I do. What do you need? What can I help you with? And when we did the session, I'm like, oh, so this is what soul retrieval is. So now I can like, done.
I love
Yeah.
it.
It's like
I
I'm
love it.
learning on the job, on the job training.
Yeah, but here's the key of what is so like magnetic is that yoke attracts yoke. So if I've experienced some things, the people who are either now experiencing it or will experience it, I don't even have to speak on that. Something about my energy draws them to me from a kindred place. And because you were indirectly, received all of this from so many women around you, and being a masculine divine energy, you have the ability to love and nurture in a way because you experienced the same abuse and issues these women did, but not as a woman, as a child being
Yes,
affected by it. But because of
yes,
what your purpose on this planet is, you were able to like have your own personal life and your own personal journey. But inside of that was the healing for anybody who you've like seen, felt, or connected with something that they went through. That's, I mean,
yes.
hey, I don't know. I'm just speaking what's coming to me right
No, it's
now, but
true. No, it's
that's
true.
what I feel like. Yeah,
You
that's
know, I
phenomenal
mean,
to me because you help people get it off in a way. So tell me about the, I don't even want to say the name of the machine. I don't want to use any of the wrong terminology because I'm still a babe in all of this. But what is the actual work that you do when someone comes in and they want to be a client and they have a session where they just dump and like share the bulk of their trauma? What would be the next step for
well,
them?
Well, the thing is, first and foremost, before anyone sees me, we have to go through what I call the client insight process, before I talk to anyone. But once we connect, there are times where I do receive spiritual guidance, psychic impressions of what needs to be done.
Mm,
And then from there on out, you know, most teachers, most healers, I don't call myself a healer. I'm a soul mentor and energy facilitator. You or the recipient is the healer. The recipient is the one who nourishes. I bring the energy forth to be of service. That's what I do. That's my joy. And I preface that so people have an understanding of what I do.
mhm,
And so I, in the essence, facilitate this grand energy from Syrian, from Lemuria, this grand energy to be of service for someone who's asking for it. And in the presence of them receiving this is work that's done on the soul level. It's very gentle, very easy, yet very palpable and felt on so many layers and levels because it's a guided meditation. It is, in essence, as I explained to some people, your soul, my soul meet in universal sync to do what is being asked of your soul.
Wow.
And it is in that space, in that dance, where the soul nourishment, the energetic nourishment, the energy medicine takes place. And the session lasts, about an hour, but the transformation, the transmutation is a few days, from that moment on, through the awareness, through the integration, through all of it, through the homework that is prescribed to them to anchor this energy into the physical space. It is up to the recipient to do what it is that they do. Yes, I'm the guide. Yes, I'm the mentor. Yes, I'm the facilitator. But if the recipient is not willing to do the other task, then it's not going to take hold. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to do what you want it to do. So it's just going to be, another run of the mill healer that they see. Because, and I've seen this happen, and I'm sure you have too in the industry, where people hop from one healer to the next, hop from one healer to the next. And some people have this expectation of one healer, doing all the work for them.
Doesn't
And
work
that's
that
not
way.
how it works because, doing the work that I've done on myself, through the energetic space, through plant medicine, through all of it, you know, you have to be responsible. And I remember, when I was, before I even met with a client, I said, well, here, fill this out. I'm not going to talk to you until you do. And they said, okay, fine. And then 5 minutes later, I get a message back saying, because one of the questions are you responsible for your own health? Or will you take responsibility for your own health and well being? And he's like, I'm not taking responsible for my own health. I was like, oh, well, then I'm not the person for you.
That's right.
Because if no one is willing to take responsibility of their own well being, then
Right, right,
um,
right. I think a big component, that's why I was led to 7 years ago when I started. I took a ministry, um, a weekly women's creative arts women's Bible study called Art Me Pretty, and switched into the Power in You Unlimited. And then from the Power in You Unlimited to Surrender to Purpose, because so many people want to be healed, but this culture, this United States, this system that we live in grows you up to be obligated to hold space in blame. It's never inward. It's
yeah,
never any
that's
self accountability. It's you, them, this, did that. So if a person's not willing to do the work, if they can't surrender to their own purpose
yeah.
and be accountable, it's never going to happen. I that relates with me so much. So I'm just grateful to like get to know you on this personal level, because there are people who need to hear, they need to book a session. No, seriously, because like you said, they're jumping from healer to healer to here. They're trying, they're at the church, the mosque, they got a tarot reader, they got all of these different things. But one, being held to your own personal accountability, and then having a soul mentor, somebody that can help you navigate spaces, who can spiritually, psychically hear and see you and help
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I hope these conversations get even more expanded, because I
Oh
think
no, I feel they are. This is the first of many.
this is what people tap into. This is what they can relate to, because some of the most profound, prolific leaders and people who are trailblazers and trendsetters, because it's connected to their assignment this go round on the planet, they got to that space, not because self-awareness, not because of healing, not because of any of those things. And now they're holding space, and it's crumbling, because this information age is they're just crumbling. And I believe that you are one of the people who are on this planet to help us heal at a higher, more accelerated rate, so we can be ready for whatever is coming down the pike.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to remember, and we can close on this, but we have to remember that never before on this planet, and not even in the very first civilization of Mu, has there been a simultaneous construction and destruction on the planet ever. And this has been going on for a while now, and it's going to continue on for at least a few more years,
Mhm,
energetically, and then it has to anchor in physically. And so
mhm.
when we begin to understand that there's no quick anything,
Right.
especially when it comes, I mean, well, there are some instances where things can come in a rapid way or an accelerated way, but when it comes to the realignment of mind, body, soul,
Mhm.
there's that space where you have to allow for integration and not really move through it. It's like, oh, well, this isn't working. I got to go find someone else. Oh, that's not working,
Stay
and
the
be
course.
and right, and then you beat yourself up or blame someone else for you not taking responsibility. And I
Mhm.
mean, granted, there are times where I didn't want to be responsible for my own shit, but
Right.
it just
If
made
not,
it
you're
last
stuck in
longer.
that story. If not, you're stuck in that story. If you don't take accountability, you will be on, what do they call it? You will be in that timeline, and your whole life will follow that timeline instead of the one that is really specifically aligned for you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so grateful, Hillis. Thank you so very much.
Mm.
This was so powerful in multiple ways for me. And I hope that anybody else that hears it, can jump on board and, tap into their purpose and, reach out to have you assist them because I'm grateful. What can I say?
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, my dear. It's
You're
been
welcome.
amazing. It's been amazing.